Sh- Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Wakakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, pushing His word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim scattered through the four corners of the globe, pushing His word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim that be like unto the speckled bird, pushing the word truthfully and sincerely. And I say shalom to you Akim out there. And this is another news article for In the News on September the 8th, 2022 at 12:22 a.m. Central Standard Time on this Thursday in the a.m. at night. And I highlighted this news article and it reads for RT.com, alternative news around the world, on September the 7th, 2022. And I highlighted the news article and it reads, risk of war with Russia serious, NATO country. Poland might find itself at war with Moscow in 3 to 10 years, the Deputy Defense Ministry warned. Yeah, this is another war. This is another rumor of war right here, because you already got the current situation with the Russia-Ukraine, and then I made a video not too long ago about the war was so even close to Moldova. I believe over in Moldova, it was a facility got hit with a rocket over there, I believe, about a couple of weeks ago. And then I did a video on that with Romania and Moldova might get caught up in a war. Now you got this news article right here, another increase of a war, another increase of rumors of wars, as the scripture stated. Now this right here, you got risk of war with Russia is serious. So Poland might get involved in the war with Moscow potentially, and it might be lesser. It might be way lesser than 3 to 10 years. It might be in the next couple of months potentially, especially how things are spiraling out of control when it comes to the nations are rising up against one another, as we're starting to see it increasing at a high pace in the latter days that we are currently living in, because these wars and rumors of wars are very likely heating up, and it's heating up more than ever, Now you might have times when things might settle down, but then it's going to increase and ramp back up once again, As I stated in my previous videos, in concerns in regards to nations rising up against nations, kingdom against kingdom, as I cover these stories and sit down lessons. So yeah, these rumors of wars are definitely increasing between the nations, and kingdom against kingdoms are definitely rising up at a higher, steady pace as we see these things unfold and unravel in the news on an everyday basis, as it's starting to increase more and more intensely, And I'm gonna read it again for edification's sake. The risk of war with Russia serious, NATO country. Poland might find itself at war with Moscow in 3 to 10 years, and a deputy defense minister warned. Poland could end up in a military conflict with Russia within 3 to 10 years, Deputy Defense Minister Marcin Osipka told the Polish newspaper DGP, in an interview published on Wednesday. Warsaw would need the time remaining before the supposed war to acquire as many as arms as possible, he added. There is a serious risk of war with Russia, Osipka said, adding that The timing of a potential war depends on how the conflict of Ukraine ends. According to the official, it would ultimately depend on how many years Russia would need to rebuild its military potential. He did not identify any additional factors that could either increase or decrease the risk of conflict. Um, Alcipio, Alcipiapa, if I pronounced the name right, raised the issue while describing the geopolitical reality that was supposedly forcing Poland to rapidly increase its own defense potential. We have to use this time for the maximum rear arraignment of the Polish army. He took newspapers as he defended what the Polish media calls a record defense budget, argument by certain undefined additional expenses. Poland's draft state budget for the next year entails record outlays on the armed forces amounting to 97 billion, resulting to 20.52 billion. Poland, the PAP news agency, reported some additional funds for monitoring the military will be raised through the extra budgetary army forces support managed by the Polish State Bank (BGK). It added, according to the Polish government statement, the funds create this past spring acceptance donations from anyone is willing to contribution to Poland's defense. According to the Oxipia fund could amount to some 30 to 40 billion, resulting 6.36 to 8.48 billion. The exact number remains undefined as it would depend on financial markets, he added. Warsaw had been pointing to the alleged threat from Russia for quite some time, since the launch of Moscow's military operation in Ukraine in late February. Poland, together with the ballistic states, has been asking the U.S. and NATO for an additional military support, citing the alleged threat. Right, while you have troops deployed not too long ago, you had a lot of U.S. troops deployed and Belarus troops deployed in Eastern Europe, and other troops being deployed, and British troops potentially going to be deployed as well too, and many more troops that's allies and allegiance that fully support Ukraine and the United States and NATO, you know. So these things are going to increase more and more as you have these other nations are potentially going to get involved in this Russia-Ukraine war, you know. Even though right now it's just Russia-Ukraine, you know. Supposedly Russia called it. Damn. Damn, something's wet in my eye. So as you see, as you see with the Russia-Ukraine situation increasing, intensifying. So potentially you're gonna have these other nations potentially might get involved with the Russia-Ukraine war, you know. So these rumors of wars are definitely heating up, as I stated previously in my previous videos. It said Warsaw has been pointing to the alleged threat from Russia for quite some time, since the launch of the Moscow's military operation in Ukraine in late February. Poland, together with the ballistic states, has been asking for U.S. and NATO support for additional military support, citing this alleged threat. Right, because I believe I did a video on this about a couple of weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, close to 2 weeks ago, stating that I believe Vladimir Putin, his military and his troops, and he had an order and issue to deploy more tanks and more vehicles near the area where you have NATO nation military groups stationed in that region over there, So, I believe Vladimir Putin stated a warning that if his military soldiers and the allies was under threat, he was going to use any means necessary to defend his allies and his military men as well too, from a potential threat from NATO. Because you got NATO and the United States are fully 100% allies with Ukraine, So if that Russia-Ukraine thing gets fully out of hand, so, Russia, they got allies as well too. They closest allies is Belarus. The President Belarus and President Vladimir Putin, they got a good, close military tie relationship, So Russia is not going to be alone as far as, they need military backup. And it's going to be from a different nation as well too. So these things are definitely going to increase. So it's not going to take long if Poland get increased in this potential involvement with the Russia-Ukraine war that's currently going on, because the Russia-Ukraine war been going on since late February of the Russians' operation in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine. So then at the same time you got Russia launching and developing and testing their what's they call their rocket launcher, Satan 1 and Satan 2 and Satan 3, I believe, while the current war is going on in Russia-Ukraine. And then you got Russia in different parts of the world doing military drills with potentially allies as well too, or allies that have been with them for quite some while. So yeah, these wars and rumors of wars, nations rising up against nations. Second war was past, behold, third war coming quickly. In the book of Ezekiel 38 is definitely coming into full effect. When Russia and all these nations are going to get involved in that World War III, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing stages of Revelations 11:14 is definitely taking place, and it's definitely going to increase more and more and more. And first, I'm gonna get into after I finish reading this, I'm gonna get into the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. It says, Moscow, meanwhile, has been insisting that the bloc expansion towards its borders, and one of its reasons for the offensive Ukraine. On Wednesday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg defends the bloc military aid to Aviv by arguing that if successful in Ukraine, Russia might risk an attack on NATO allies. It says Poland has Slovakia. Oh, my bad about that. But continue on with the reading. It says on Wednesday, the NATO Security General Jens Stoltenberg defend the bloc's military aid to Kyiv by arguing that if a successful in Ukraine, Russia might risk an attack on the NATO allies. Poland has been on the staunchest supporters of Kyiv since the start of the conflict, has also taken a hardline position on the relations with Moscow. It stopped issuing visas to Russian citizens as one of the EU members advocating for a bloc-wide visa ban for Russians. So yeah, these tensions are definitely stirring up, and a potential of Poland getting involved in this Russia-Ukraine situation. It's going to be a likelihood case that's going to happen, and it's not going to be no 3 to 10 years. It's going to be lesser than that. Hey, it might be lesser than 7 to 8 months, especially how this Russia-Ukraine thing increasing. This is the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel 38:1, and I'm going to read all the way down to verse 7. This is the book of Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 1, and it reads, "And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog and the land of Magog, and the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, and the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal." Right, because Yahweh Bashem El Shai is putting that spear back on the Russians, But Russia represents that bear, Yahweh Bashem El Shai is pushing that warlike spirit back on those Russians, and that's what you're seeing right now with the Russia-Ukraine situation. And then you got potentially Poland might get involved in the war right along with the other nations as well too, of that region of Eastern Europe, I believe, with Moldova and Romania as well too, So it's potentially, It says in verse 4, "And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thy horse, and all thy armies, and horses, and horsemen, and all of them clothed all sorts of armor, in even a great company, with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords." Ezekiel 38:5. Persia, Ethiopia, right? Because the Persians are the modern day Iranians. Ethiopia, that's the modern day Ethiopia is Kush, called Kushites. Libya, which is Ishmaelites, was the modern day Arabs, even though Arabs is a mixed multitude. Their armies as well too, with all of them with shields and helmets. Verse 6, Ezekiel 38:6, Gomer, because Gomer is the modern day Turkish people. That's why you got Turkey got their operation going on. They got tensions with one another. Against, you got Turkish and the Kurdish people, the Kurdish soldiers versus the Turkish soldiers in that region of Syria, as they potentially gonna launch their operation over there in Turkey. Turkish people. The Turkish soldiers that are gonna potentially fully launch their operation in Syria. It's already launched in Iraq, because as they try to tackle and against evil organization factors, as they call it, against the YPG, which is they have it as the Kurds that represents that organization, as they look at them as negative organization groups, as the tensions increase in that region in the Middle East, parts like Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, places like Yemen, places like the cross-border conflict, as I've been mentioning previously in my previous videos of Israel and Syria, the cross-border conflict, that is as well too. Ezekiel 38:6, and I'm reading again for edification's sake. Turkish, which is the Gomer is the modern day Turkish people and their armies. Ezekiel 38:6, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah and of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. Ezekiel 38:7, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy companies that are assembled unto thee, and be thou guard unto them. Yep. So it's stating from Ezekiel 38:1 all the way to verse 7. It's Yahweh Hashem El Shai is gathering up all these nations that is going to be in war with Russia, Turkey, Ethiopia, Libya, Persia as well too, and in Turkey, right along this battle, and what we're seeing, it's increasing more and more and more, wars around the world, like I mentioned before, the Middle East, Russia-Ukraine situation, the situation in Yemen, the situation in Syria, the situation in Iraq, the situation in Lebanon, the situation in Israel, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, which is ongoing, on and off, commotions of wars, proxy wars, endless proxy wars between the nations and different kingdoms as well too. So now, far as Poland getting involved potentially with the Russia-Ukraine war thing, it's gonna seem like it's gonna get a little more increase, especially a potential conflict between Moscow and Poland, So it's gonna increase, and it's gonna be lesser time, and it's gonna be way lesser than 3 to 10 years. It might be a couple of months, about probably in the next 7 to 8 months, potentially. Ain't no telling, especially how these wars and rumors of wars, nations rising up against kingdoms as well too, This is the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 14, and it reads, the second woe was past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly. Right, because we're seeing the third woe coming quickly, between the nations and different kingdoms as well too. Like I mentioned, you have wars in the Middle East, wars in the Russia-Ukraine situation, wars different parts of Africa, wars increasingly around the world, so it's going to increase more and more and more. So a potential Moscow and Poland, Poland potentially get involved with the Russia-Ukraine thing, it's going to increase more and more. So it's not going to be a 3 to 10 year thing of a potential war between Poland and Moscow. It's going to increase more and more and more. It's going to be closer than ever. It's not going to be no 3 to 10 years. It might be in the next couple of months, how the way things are heading, as far as the wars and commotions of wars between the nations, as I bring out Luke 21:9. This is the book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 9. But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, which we're hearing right now increasingly, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by, right? Because more different prophecies got to come to pass and take shape on the planet Earth as well, too. Just like the Charagma, which is recorded in the book of Revelations 13, verse 16 through verse 18 as well, too. And the Revelations 11 and 14 that I just brought out. The second woe was past, behold, the third woe coming quickly. Matthew 24 and 6 through verse 7. Wars and rumors of wars, nations rising up against nations as well too. So we seeing these things are definitely increasing as we see the increase and rise of wars and rumors of wars on an everyday basis, So it's gonna increase and intensify more and more and more, especially between these nations, increasingly against one another, So with that, I hope this lesson was edifying through the spirit, power, grace, and mercy of the Yahweh Yahushua. And first and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai Ba'ashem, Mukakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, pushing the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, that be like unto the speckled bird, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And until next time, I will say shalom and a ball.